they would have never been able to paint the picture that we were able to paint for them had we not been involved. Had we not told them what we saw, what we experienced, had we not put the time sequence back together. We really worked hand in hand with our surgeon, even the CEO of the hospital, the neurologist and the neurosurgeon, to put the real time frame to things that wasn't in the notes. They all believed that there was a 2-hour window before the onset of the herniation or before the swelling occurred. And when we told them what we had saw throughout the day, what we had experienced and what my son had done, they realized that it had started much earlier in the day. We believe my son didn't fall asleep at 9:30. My son really passed out. Unfortunately, in hindsight, we look at it now and we say to ourselves, how come none of this was caught? How come the nurse didn't catch these things? Why didn't she ask for somebody else to come in the room? I always get the question as to why didn't we as parents initiate a response from somebody else? And I always respond, I'm like, before this incident, I considered myself probably one of the atypical consumers out there. I went in, I trusted 100% the system, and I believed they were the experts and they would do everything they could to care for my son, or me, or my wife, or any other family member for that matter. Now I go in wide open. Some of you know my mom's been in the hospital for the past month, and I've been there for a lot of it. And trust me, I think a lot of the hospital staff think I'm nuts by now, but I ask a lot of questions I don't think they're used to. And I ask to be involved, and it's kind of, I'm getting a response that it's okay, you don't need to be involved. And I kind of like, no, it's okay, I need to be involved. And my mom has even learned a hard lesson for herself that she appreciates my involvement. But at the same time, my involvement when Mitch Dvorak, our Executive Director of Consumers Advancing Patient Safety, came to me and said, hey Jim, we've been asked to have one of our members be on the NAQC. And he thought, we thought you'd be an ideal person to be a part of this. And I'm like, all right, when do I start? And where do I need to be? Obviously, I need to apologize to all of you for not being here in February. That was my son's birthday. Christian's birthday is February 18th. And I already thanked everybody for moving the meeting next February up to February 17th so I can be here. As you can imagine, my family and we always celebrate February 18th still in regards to my son's birthday, and we still do things around with the family. And we always amaze people because our family is still growing. We had one other child, and we're about to have another one. People are like, what are you doing to yourselves? And we're like, we're just nutty parents, I think, at the same time. But this is very vital to me. Very vital from the standpoint that I really do believe sometimes nurses are perceived as consumers are sometimes. As, if we were to build a hierarchy of, involvement and opinions and how much you pay attention to them, I unfortunately believe consumers may be at the bottom. And then worse, nurses are right above that. And we've been fighting, obviously, at CAPS, as Helen and I'm sure Joyce as well, too. We've been fighting to put everybody on the same plateau. The worst thing that could have been said to me by our surgeon during the root cause analysis was, well, you know your son better than any of us do, having reviewed the situation. And I said, yeah, how come everybody else didn't know that? How come everybody else didn't realize that I knew something was happening that was wrong, and everybody just said there's nothing wrong? There were many instances where nobody could understand why the nurse didn't realize there were things that were going wrong. And, my wife and I just go, we don't know. We don't know. There were tests that were done that people said should have brought about questions. I said, why didn't the nurse just go next door and ask somebody to evaluate my son? We were in an ICU unit for recovery. There was a nurse per every room, and the only time they decided to put a nurse on 2 rooms was when the nurse felt very comfortable with the care that was being given to that initial patient. My son's nurse felt like his care was good enough for her to take a second patient that afternoon. And we're still dumbfounded by it because we're like, she couldn't get him to do a respirator test. She couldn't wake him up to do a respirator test. And she did blame it on the narcotics. She did say he's heavily sedated. He's very difficult to wake up from the sedation. And when we tell people that, they obviously shake their heads and say, absolutely not. He should have been able to be woken up. Helen and I had dinner last night and had some great conversations. And trust me, she had just as many questions as probably many of you would have in regards to the reactions that were happening that day. Not being an expert in the medical field, I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys about sports and tell you all about my expertise in that area. I'm still learning, but I also still realize there's things that definitely need to be improved. Like I mentioned, over the past month I sat in a hospital, and I'm probably going to write at least a 5-page letter to that hospital in regards to the things that I paid attention to and the things that are done that aren't involving family members. And I have my brother to blame for part of it because he was protecting my mother. And my mother now realizes that she came out of surgery thinking that she was half dead. And I'm like, no, Mom, this is normal. And didn't understand why she was still had breathing tubes in her, didn't understand why she had drain tubes in her. And I said, well, Ma, you had an aneurysm removed, an abdominal aneurysm removed. And I said, you know, it's major surgery. You're going to come out. This is what you're going to be like. You're going to have some recovery time. Unfortunately, they told her she'd be out in 5 to 7 days. She's heading into her first month. She's got some rehabilitation. She's got some issues to deal with following recovery. Weird things have happened. She actually has drop foot, and we're not sure why. We've got to work on that, and she's going through physical therapy, and that's part of it. You know, we're asking a lot of questions. And for my mom, she's very passive. She doesn't want to ruffle feathers. And I said, Ma, I used to be like you, but now I don't mind ruffling anybody's feathers, and we just ask a lot of questions. You know, our reality is, I think being a part of NAQC is just the role that you play. I have spoken to a number of nursing students, being able to teach at universities that have schools of nursing. I jump at the chance. And I tell nurses, I'm like, you spend 24 hours a day with a patient in a hospital environment. A surgeon spends however long it takes to do the surgery and rounds. I'm like, it's nice to have them around, but I also know 99% of that care after surgery is pretty much in your hands. To make sure things are done properly, make sure patients are taken care of, more importantly, make sure the recovery goes as expected. And I really believe it's way underappreciated. It's way underappreciated in regards to the involvement that you play. And I think it's a vital, very vital role, and people need to pay more attention to what you do. I probably scared more nursing students to get out of nursing than to get into nursing, but I always tell them, I'm like, I can't do your job. I'd never be able to do your job. And I said, but you know, you should be all applauded for being in this profession. And for the jobs that you have done over the years. It takes a very, people always say, my wife and I are very strong people. And I'm like, I don't do this every day. You people are very strong. In regards to the individuals that work in this field, you have very strong stomachs, very strong wills, and can put up with a lot that I don't think I could do on a daily basis. And I think that makes a huge amount of power for all of you to say, people need to start paying more attention to what nurses have to say. People have to start paying more attention to what they believe the proper direction of healthcare needs to take. So hopefully I can play somewhat of a very vital role alongside of you as a colleague. Thank you. And you can ask me all questions at lunchtime.